Welcome to the Masterclass series, Being Future Ready, brought to you by Indian Institute of Management Bangalore, Karmyogi Bharat and Vadhvani Foundation. We are excited to bring forth leaders, academicians, policymakers, thinkers, strategists and experts on emerging technologies where they will share their experience, expertise and advice on digital transformation and the adoption of implementing emerging technologies in the government that results in a stronger governance and better public service delivery. In these masterclasses, we will have the following agenda where we would like to introduce our partners, IIM Bangalore, Karmyogi Bharat, ourselves, Vadhvani Institute of Technology and Policy. We also get a chance to win a certificate upon attending these masterclasses. We would like to introduce our partners, Indian Institute of Management Bangalore and the Center for Excellence on Digital Technology Management. Some of the key points to know are: we would now like to introduce our partner Karmyogi Bharat, a not-for-profit Section 8 company with 100% government ownership responsible for driving Mission Karmyogi by owning and managing iGot Karmyogi technology platform. We would like to introduce ourselves. We are Vadhvani Institute of Technology and Policy from Vadhvani Foundation. One of the key benefits of the Masterclass series, Being Future Ready, is to meet and interact with industry experts, accomplished government leaders, and practitioners on emerging technologies. We learn in these sessions their experience and expertise and advice on digital transformation and about adoption of implementing emerging technologies in the government. To make this experience worthwhile, we also award Certificate of Participation to all registered audience who attend all these masterclasses or 50% of these masterclass sessions conducted by us. So without much further ado, let's deep dive into this session today. We are extremely excited, like I mentioned, to welcome a speaker for the topic on new and emerging technologies in government, Shri R Chandrasekhar. A quick introduction before I give him the stage. He is currently the chairman of the Center for the Digital Future. He has been a former president for NASSCOM, secretary to the Government of India and for Electronics and IT. He has also been the former chairman of the Telecom Commission of India and secretary Telecom. Mr. Chandrasekhar is a decorated officer who is also a recipient of the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration. Also, Mr. Chandrasekhar is associated with several organizations and in advisory roles and board positions. He is also had a distinguished career in the Department of Information Technology, where he has initiated the National E-Governance Program. He has first initiated the 3 pillars of e-governance, namely Common Service Center Program, the State Data Center Program, and the State Wide Area Network Program of India. Mr. Chandrasekhar obviously comes with the experience and a unique breadth of expertise, both in the government and private sector, that covers the entire gamut of the IT and telecom sectors. He has been a member of the country's premier Indian Administrative Services since 1975, and he is a distinguished alumnus of IIT Bombay. We are very excited to have you, sir. I request you to now take the floor and commence the masterclass session.
I'm going to talk to you today about disruptive technologies and their role in governance. And my talk will be in 2 parts. In part 1, I'm going to talk about why are we talking about new and emerging technologies. It's not as if the use of technology in government is something new. It's been going on for more than 3 decades. So the first part would be devoted to why we are talking about new and emerging technologies today. And the second part is on the how. How do you go about actually using them in practice for practitioners, whether you are a government employee or a consulting organization or, from a user perspective, how does it look? So it's really about the mechanics of implementation within the government. So after the first section, I will stop and then may take some questions and answers before moving on to the how. So that's the structure of this whole discussion. So on new and emerging technologies, the questions regarding the why are they so important? What are some of the opportunities and examples of use of new and emerging technologies, and what are some of the issues and concerns? So the first question is, what are these new technologies? What do we mean by new and emerging technologies? There's a whole slew of them, starting with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. And some things which everybody is familiar with, like the mobile and social media, and things which are now beginning to gain traction, like natural language processing and robots and drones and so on. And there are some which are, already visible or around the corner, like quantum computing, which have not yet made their presence felt, but which could be revolutionary as well. So there are a whole lot of these technologies which today are causing a terrific amount of disruption across different areas. And this disruption is affecting every single sector in the economy. Whether you take something like retail and consumer and logistics, or you take things like healthcare and agriculture and professional services and so on. So from agriculture to aircraft, from the oldest human practice to the most recent ones, they are all being disrupted because of these new technologies. And some of the trends, the global trends that are really visible now, are that it's not just only the use of these technologies, but the dominance of platforms which are powered by big data and analytics, IoT and artificial intelligence and so on. And what we are seeing today is the convergence of technology and the domain, and the value lies at the junction of technology and domain, and consulting and innovation actually brings out this whole value. And today, if you look at the technology sector, for which India is well known, it is actually expected to deliver not technology solutions, but business value. And AI and ML, which are sweeping across sectors, creates huge opportunities, but it also poses some challenges. And we'll talk about both a little bit. And one of the exciting areas, particularly for a country like India, which is hugely multilingual, is the natural language processing, both text as well as increasingly speech-to-speech, and its integration into different applications. As an example, now a lot of natural language processing in the form of chatbots and so on are actually coming up in government departments and assisting people in using websites, checking application status and so on. And there are some departments which are beginning to use them, and some have also aiming to graduate to the next generation, where they learn, where these chatbots learn as they interact. And of course, its use for translating documents is also quite common now. Now, there is something, special or unique about these new technologies, which bears mention. And that's also the reason why we are talking about them. The first is they're exceptionally powerful. They are infinitely scalable. They can be scaled up to cover every person on the planet. And it can offer personalization at scale. In the past, you could either have personalization, like your own personal tailor, or you could have scale, like Henry Ford's automotive company. But today, you can have personalization at scale thanks to these technologies. And then most of them are highly affordable, at least at an individual level. They're easy to use and quick to implement. So all of these unique characteristics actually make them particularly important from an India perspective. This has actually resulted in a very fortuitous confluence from India's point of view in terms of how these technologies can be applied. I've already talked about the unique characteristics of these technologies, but at the same time, we also have a globally dominant IT industry and a world-class IT workforce in the country. We've seen over the last couple of decades explosive growth of the telecom infrastructure with the mobile revolution, and now with 5G and broadband being rolled out. To add to this, we have also now the second largest entrepreneurial ecosystem, and which is driving innovation in the country, and innovation which is suited and tailored to India's conditions and needs. And finally, public policy is now consistently driving digitalization, whether it's through the Digital India program or a whole lot of other initiatives. As a result of this, any statistics that you look at, the growth and adoption of these technologies in India has been staggering. And some of you would have seen, even when Satya Nadella came very recently this week, he talked about how amazing the spread and scale of adoption in India of these technologies were. These are just some statistics. You can find many, many more statistics, but they all tell the same story. So there is really, what we are seeing is turbocharged growth, and there is much that we can be proud of, although we are still at the early stages of adopting and realizing their full potential. So all of this is not just about technology, but it is changing the whole business environment. It is changing business practices. We've all seen how e-commerce adoption has gone up. We've all seen how social media usage has gone up. We've all seen how services by consumer products, the way they are using all of these platforms to improve the services to customers and so on. And it's not just about businesses. People themselves are changing, whether it is the older generation or the younger people. Right from the time a child is aware of the surroundings, the use of technology begins. The economy itself is significantly impacted and is functioning in a distinctly different way, increasingly. Even the way politics is practiced has changed, and all of us have seen that. When all this is happening all around, it's obvious that digital governance would be impacted, and naturally there are trends and imperatives which flow out of this. The adoption of technology by the government has been on steroids for some time now. We had the NEGP earlier, and then the E-Kranti, and now the Digital India program. And there are mega projects which cover hundreds of millions of people, which is a mind-boggling scale for any country. And across the world, a lot of these have been commented upon, whether it's the Aadhaar project or the COVID project or GST and UPI. There are huge waves that these have made across the world, not just within India. And increasingly in the social sector, in healthcare, in agriculture and education and so on, we are seeing the beginnings of the same kind of disruption following. States obviously have been also very proactive. In fact, some states, I would say, are even ahead of the central government in terms of the usage of technology. And there are others who are also trying hard to catch up. And we have a situation today where even senior government functionaries respond on social media and are responding to concerns and views that are expressed there. One of the notable features, especially in the context of the platform dominance that has emerged globally, is that India has become seen as a global leader in digital public infrastructure. So these are publicly owned platforms which are seen as key building blocks, whether it's the UPI or GSTN, or now we are talking about the ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, and so on. In a sense, even the Karmayogi Bharat is such a training platform which caters to so many different needs. And emerging platforms in areas in the social sector, like I mentioned, and the convergence of technology and domain. But one other thing that these platforms are doing is blurring the difference between government and private sector services. The healthcare platform, for example, brings both government providers and private providers together. And this has enormous implications for the way these are thought about and implemented. And APIs are, in fact, enabling external entities to connect and add value on top of this. So in a sense, it's not just about government, it's also catalyzing and enabling private sector services. Obviously, there are major concerns which are also coming up, because as digital becomes dominant, security threats are mounting in the digital world. We've all seen fake and bad news, the kind of impact it can have, and it travels extremely fast. The response time of public authorities is very, very limited. And also, all of these are happening on multiple channels, on mobile, on internet, on social media, all at the same time. And you can't have a segmented approach where you deal with each one separately. So in what's called the omni-channel approach has to be adopted, and an integrated approach has to be adopted. Especially with the advent of things like AI and computer vision and so on. There are now increasingly also concerns about privacy, about security, and profiling of individuals. One of the other consequences is that data has emerged as a major resource and a contentious issue. And in a lot of countries, there's even a trend towards data localization. And there is this whole concept of data sovereignty that is emerging, that a country owns its own data and therefore has to find ways to protect and preserve that. But it's not that all of these threats are only coming from technology. I think that would be a misunderstanding, because most of the breaches, in fact, are coming from human error or insider involvement. It's not tech alone, and that's important to keep in mind as we go forward with implementation. Here are some examples of how these new technologies are being used, for example, to predict certain issues. Technology has gone past storing information, then analyzing it, and now it has gone on to predict what is likely to happen. For example, who are the students who are likely to drop out in school? Who are the patients of TB who are likely to stop the follow-up treatments? How do you detect likely frauds or the most likely fraudsters in platforms like the GST? How do you identify high-risk cases of pregnancy? All of these are today being done using machine learning approaches here in India. And then I talked about the computer vision and the kind of applications that are being applied in the government space, using face recognition for attendance, for example, or in healthcare to analyze X-rays and augment the work that radiologists do, or MRI pictures and so on. Similarly, in agriculture, early spotting of pest attacks and so on. And again, for traffic, for those of you who have been unlucky enough to receive a traffic violation challan, you would be happy or unhappy to know that some of this is coming because of computerized monitoring of the traffic. So as we look at all these amazing possibilities, and I've just touched on a very few of them, one must ask the question, what's the primary goal here of using these technologies? Is it to enhance the government's efficiency, the access to data and information, the huge volumes that government has, or its ability to reach the citizens? Or is it enhancing the citizens' ease of availing services, or personalizing these services to a citizen the way that a lot of the business platforms today do? Of course, these two are not mutually exclusive, but nonetheless, the primacy that you accord to one or the other does make a big difference. And the NEGP, when it was first launched, actually focused and emphasized the need to improve citizen services. So it's important to keep these perspectives in mind. So with this, let me stop here before I move on to the second part of the how and pause. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try and respond to them. I think what perhaps seems to be the thrust of the question is how can we ensure that AI does not take away jobs or the work that people are doing? Would that be a correct interpretation of the question? So assuming that that's what was intended, I think what we are seeing is that a lot of the fears that AI would take away jobs, would replace humans, and humans would have nothing much left to do except to strum a violin under a tree, and everything else would be taken care of by AI. These are vastly exaggerated. What is coming up is, for example, the whole approach of human-AI combinations, where AI assists the human being. I mentioned the example, for example, of reading X-rays or reading MRIs. AI undoubtedly helps them. It actually produces its own analysis. But in most cases, even now, it is the final call is taken by a professional radiologist or an MRI expert. Yes, their productivity goes up manifold with these support. So it is not replacing them, but it is serving as an extension of human capability and the human mind. And I think that's the kind of symbiotic relationship that we need to build. There are also some ethical questions. For example, the use of AI in transportation, autonomous transport, or more recently, this whole debate about AI-powered drones being used in the Russia-Ukraine war, and whether drones should be allowed to make those kind of decisions using AI of choosing a target and so on. So there are all of these concerns as well. But I think in short, we don't need to worry too much about AI completely taking away the jobs. We should be concerned about how do we enhance people's productivity using these technologies. I think today we can say that the examples of transformation in governance are simply too many to list. But I'll just give you some examples of, for example, the pervasive use of Aadhaar to identify people for a whole variety of purposes. It's a horizontal project. And in the past, sometimes we have almost forgotten how difficult it was for people to go and identify themselves. Pensioners had to get all sorts of certificates to prove that they were alive, believe it or not. And similarly, for people to prove their identity to a bank, they had to gather so many different documents, or to get their whole landholding details. It was quite a struggle. In some of the social sector, as I was mentioning, we are now seeing increasingly the use of remote healthcare. A lot of this was in fact accelerated during the pandemic, during the COVID times. I've mentioned the example of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the way the passports are issued. The entire system has been completely transformed. The way income tax, for example, is filed, the way the refunds are given, it's all happening automatically within a couple of days without people, having to run around. So for a lot of the younger generation who have actually grown up in this environment, sometimes it's hard to imagine a world not so long ago in India where people used to sleep at the railway ticket booking counter for 3 days during the holiday rush season just to get a ticket. So I think the examples are very, very numerous, and you will find them all over. Yes, I think that, the trust that citizens have in government's technology initiatives is a critical factor. And I'll think that this trust has to be maintained in two ways. One is through technological means itself. And there are some technologies like use of blockchain, for example, which are used to enhance trust. For example, how do you trust that a product is organic, truly organic? How do you build a series of transactions where all the parties to the transaction are absolutely confident that every person involved is actually there and has actually taken those decisions. So these are technology approaches like a distributed ledger, which have brought an amazing level of trust and inviolability of the authenticity of the records. But the other side to building trust is, along with the technology, as I was saying, to actually have a human in the loop. You can have, for example, a chatbot which responds to queries on where is my application or why was it rejected or things like that. And 90% or 95% of the queries would get answered. But there has to also be a mechanism beyond that where you can escalate the matter, and then, if there is something which is not clear or the technology is still not perfect, you can actually appeal to the next level where there's a human being involved. So in that sense, it's a combination of technological approaches involving human, that is officials, in the process, and also to relook at the process. How do you eliminate processes which involve physical presence of individuals, which causes huge inconvenience? Imagine a villager having to go to a tehsil office for a small thing, or even to a district office. These are not only inconvenient, they waste a lot of time, there's a huge cost involved, and not everybody can afford these. So I think we have to keep all of these factors in mind as we try to build trust in the system. I think that this is arguably the most important purpose of e-governance. At least it has been my guiding philosophy in all the e-governance initiatives, that the purpose of all that we do in e-governance ultimately is the citizen. The efficiency of government is secondary, in my humble opinion. And therefore, when you look at it from a citizen perspective, all you have to do is to look around and look at how the way we get different services, not government services, but private services, how it has changed. How we subscribe to for a mobile phone, how we subscribe to a DTH service, how we subscribe to an online OTT platform, how we get services done for our television or refrigerator or things like that, or even let's say water purifier. Everything is being done through online mechanisms. The private sector has not found that this is not only efficient and leads to customer satisfaction, but it actually reduces costs for the companies. So when all of this is happening at such a frenetic pace in the private sector, why should government function differently? Government also has to build the capability and function similarly. And ultimately, I think we have to keep reminding ourselves that the government here is for the citizens. It exists in order to meet what the citizens need. And these technologies, for all the reasons that I mentioned, are enormously useful in doing that. From the time I joined service in 1975, we were told that, we have to reach out to citizens, we have to actually connect with each citizen. But I think all of these remained largely slogans for much of my career. But it's only today, with these technologies, that it is actually possible to do it in reality.
Thank you for watching this session today. We hope you liked the Masterclass session on Being Future Ready. Stay tuned for our next sessions in Being Future Ready series.